On the edge of a quiet countryside town lived a young couple named Ethan and Grace. They were not rich, but they had something many wealthy people wished they possessed: true love. They lived in a small wooden house with a tiny garden where Grace grew colorful flowers. Every evening, Ethan returned from his construction job with tired hands, and Grace welcomed him with a warm smile that made all his worries disappear. Their life was simple, yet they were happy. One evening, while they were having dinner, Grace looked at Ethan with shining eyes. "I have something to tell you," she whispered. Ethan smiled. "What is it?" Grace gently placed his hand on her stomach. "We're going to be parents." For a moment Ethan couldn't speak. Tears filled his eyes before he hugged her tightly. "This is the happiest day of my life," he said. From that day forward, Ethan worked even harder. He accepted extra shifts, skipped his lunch breaks, and saved every penny. His dream was to give his wife and their future child a better life. Months passed and Grace's pregnancy progressed well. Ethan never let her carry anything heavy. Every morning before work, he kissed her forehead and promised, "I'll always protect you." Grace smiled every time she heard those words. One rainy afternoon, Ethan's company announced layoffs because of financial problems. "I'm sorry," the manager said. "We have no choice." Ethan lost his job. He walked home slowly, wondering how he would tell Grace. As he entered the house, Grace immediately noticed something was wrong. "What happened?" Ethan forced a smile. "Nothing." But Grace held his hand. "You've never lied to me." Finally, Ethan admitted everything. Instead of crying, Grace hugged him. "We still have each other. We'll find a way." Her faith gave Ethan strength. The next morning he searched everywhere for work. He carried bricks, unloaded trucks, cleaned warehouses, and accepted any honest job he could find. Sometimes he earned enough to buy dinner. Sometimes he didn't. One cold evening, Ethan returned home empty-handed. Grace secretly divided the last loaf of bread into 2 pieces. She gave Ethan the larger one. "Aren't you hungry?" he asked. "I already ate while cooking." She smiled. But later that night, Ethan saw her quietly drinking water because there wasn't enough food. His heart broke. The next morning, Ethan sold his father's old watch, the only thing he had inherited. With the money, he bought groceries and medicine for Grace. She noticed the missing watch. "Where is your father's watch?" Ethan smiled. "It found a better purpose." Grace burst into tears. Weeks later, Grace suddenly became seriously ill. The doctor examined her carefully. "She needs treatment immediately," he said. "The pregnancy is becoming risky." The treatment costs far more than Ethan could afford. Desperate, Ethan worked day and night without sleeping. One evening, while riding his bicycle home after work, a speeding truck struck him. He was thrown onto the roadside. His arm was badly injured. Despite the pain, his first words were, "My wife. She needs me." The hospital treated his injuries, but Ethan refused to stay. "I can't rest," he said. "My family comes first." With one injured arm, he continued working. His co-workers were amazed. "Why don't you stop?" Ethan smiled weakly. "Because my wife never stopped believing in me." One day, an elderly businessman watched Ethan helping another worker even though he himself was exhausted. The old man approached him. "You remind me of someone." Ethan simply smiled. Days later, the businessman offered him a permanent job at his company. It wasn't charity. It was respect. For the first time in months, Ethan earned a stable salary. He immediately paid for Grace's treatment. Several weeks later, Grace safely gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. When Ethan held his daughter for the first time, tears rolled down his face. "We made it," he whispered. Life slowly became brighter. Years passed. Ethan worked honestly and earned several promotions. Grace started a small bakery from home. Together, they built the future they had once only dreamed about. One evening, their daughter asked, "Dad, what's the secret to a happy marriage?" Ethan looked at Grace before answering. "The secret isn't having a perfect life. It's choosing each other even when life isn't perfect." Grace smiled and added, "Real love isn't measured by expensive gifts. It's measured by sacrifices made without expecting anything in return." Their daughter never forgot those words. Many years later, Ethan and Grace celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary. Their house was filled with children, grandchildren, laughter, and love. As everyone celebrated, Ethan quietly took Grace's hand. "Do you remember our little wooden house?" Grace laughed. "And the nights we only had one loaf of bread?" Ethan nodded. "I'd live every hardship again if it meant spending my life with you." Grace rested her head on his shoulder. "So would I." The family watched them with admiration. They had learned the greatest lesson of all. True love is not proven when life is easy. It is proven when two people refuse to let go during the hardest days of life. Money can disappear. Jobs can be lost. Dreams can be delayed. But a husband and wife who trust, sacrifice, forgive, and stand beside each other can overcome almost anything. Because in the end, the strongest homes are not built with bricks. They are built with love, faith, loyalty, and promises that are kept even through the darkest storms. 25 years passed, and Ethan and Grace's daughter, Lily, had grown into a successful doctor. She often told people that everything she had achieved was because of her parents' sacrifices. Ethan had become the manager of the company where he once started as an ordinary worker, while Grace's small bakery had grown into one of the most loved bakeries in town. Their life was finally filled with comfort. But Ethan and Grace never forgot the difficult days that had shaped them. One winter morning, Ethan suddenly collapsed while working in the garden. Grace rushed to him in panic, and Lily immediately took him to the hospital. After several tests, the doctor delivered heartbreaking news. His heart is weak. He needs surgery as soon as possible. Although the family now had enough money for the operation, the news left everyone in tears. That night, Grace sat beside Ethan's hospital bed. "You spent your whole life protecting me," she whispered, holding his hand. "Now it's my turn to protect you." Ethan smiled gently. "I was never afraid of hard work or pain. My only fear was leaving you alone." Grace wiped away her tears. "You made me a promise many years ago. You said we would grow old together. And I still intend to keep that promise," Ethan replied with a weak smile. The surgery lasted several long hours. Grace, Lily, and the entire family prayed without stopping. Finally, the surgeon walked into the waiting room with a smile. The operation was successful. Everyone burst into tears of joy. Months later, Ethan recovered completely. To celebrate his recovery, Lily organized a surprise anniversary party for her parents. Friends, neighbors, and relatives gathered to honor the couple whose love had inspired an entire community. During the celebration, Lily stood on the stage with tears in her eyes. "When people ask me who my heroes are, I don't mention famous people," she said. "My heroes are my mother and father. My father taught me that real strength comes from sacrifice. My mother taught me that real love means standing beside someone, even when life is at its worst." The audience applauded with emotion. Ethan slowly walked onto the stage and looked at Grace. He reached into his pocket and took out a small box. Inside was a beautiful ring. Grace looked surprised. "Ethan, after all these years?" He smiled. "When we got married, I couldn't afford the ring you deserved. I promised myself that one day I would replace that broken dream." With trembling hands, he slipped the new ring onto Grace's finger. "I would choose you again. In every lifetime." Grace couldn't hold back her tears. She hugged Ethan as the entire hall stood and applauded. Years later, Ethan and Grace became grandparents. Every Sunday, the whole family gathered at their home. The grandchildren loved hearing stories about the little wooden house, the rainy nights, and the single loaf of bread that had once been enough because it was shared with love. One afternoon, their oldest grandson asked, "Grandpa, what is the greatest treasure in the world?" Ethan smiled, looked at Grace sitting beside him, and replied, "It isn't money. It isn't fame. The greatest treasure is finding someone who stays beside you when you have nothing, and still loves you when you have everything." Grace gently held his hand, just as she had done decades earlier. As the sun began to set, the family watched the elderly couple sitting together on the porch, smiling peacefully. Nothing in life had been easy. They had faced poverty, illness, heartbreak, and fear. But they had never stopped believing in each other. And that was the reason their love never faded. Moral of the story: a successful marriage is not built on wealth or perfection. It is built on trust, sacrifice, forgiveness, loyalty, and standing together through every storm. True love grows stronger with every hardship shared.